All right, all right. How's it going, folks? We are back here on Knocked Out by Kenny. Got my brother Maestro A. Moving on over, we was just having a cast over there on his channel.
I just messed up. I was dropping the link in the private chat, man. I didn't drop it in the main chat. That's my fault.
It's okay, it happens. Hopefully, people come over. They will. I got faith in people. They'll definitely head over here. Hopefully,
Yeah. I dropped it just now, so hopefully it will work.
nice, awesome, awesome. All right. All right, so let's get started. I actually want to continue off of a topic that you were speaking off on your channel. The first thing that I had lined up was actually not the first thing; it was one of my topics. But since you finished it off on your channel, let's just start this off with this. Malik Scott
Yeah.
says it's a blessing to be in the position of Deontay Wilder. He feels that Deontay Wilder is right now set up to be a champion again, set up to potentially have another takeover and a second life in the division. What do you feel about it? Do you think that he's being delusional as Deontay Wilder's trainer,
I mean,
or or do you think there is a future?
I think he has to say that, right? I mean, if you're Malik Scott, you've only trained one man your entire career. You've only trained him for one fight your entire career. So this is just the beginning for Malik Scott, right? At least he hopes it's just the beginning. And he hopes it's not the end for Deontay Wilder, a guy who's fought for quite a long time, has got over 30 fights, but whose last two fights have been stopped brutally, in brutal fashion. And it was because of the first loss by knockout that Malik Scott was hired. And Malik Scott did a pretty good job preparing Wilder for the third fight with Fury. I don't know if I would have gone the route of bulking up the way he did, especially that kind of top heavy bulk up with kind of the skinny legs still. But I don't think that was Malik Scott's call. I thought, if anything, that was probably Wilder's call and the people he had there in his strength and conditioning team that were gassing him up on those bench press drills, you know. In terms of what he was capable of doing, I feel that he did a competent job. And based on what he did, I think that he definitely wants that freight train to keep rolling, right? Who wouldn't want to try to train him for another shot at the heavyweight championship, right? So I think he thinks he's blessed to be in the position he's in, training one of the top heavyweights in the world, whose first fight as a trainer was for a heavyweight championship. Not even Ben Davidson got that, right? Ben Davidson had to train Fury through the Fat Camp and through the Pianetta Camp and through the Sefet Safari Camp, and then got the shot at Wilder in the first fight, right, Kenny? I mean, Malik Scott walked right into a heavyweight title fight, so of course he wants that to keep going.
He talks a great game too, bro. Like, I actually enjoy watching Malik Scott talk on the camera, on the mic. Like, he talks a great game. He's very well at speaking and vocalizing the points that he's trying to get across. Yeah, you are definitely right. I do think that he is saying what he has to say, and I do think that he's trying to stay in the same position. He's trying to have another shot with Deontay Wilder. And I do think that he does have a shot at doing that. I don't think that it's over for Deontay Wilder's career. I do think that depending how the division goes, Deontay Wilder has another shot at redeeming himself. And I mean that, looking like the person that people once believed he was. And not the guy who's laying on his back or on his front on the canvas. So yeah, it leaves me with these other questions that I wrote down here, which is, what does the future look like for Deontay Wilder? Should he actually retire, like the rumor mill was swinging that he was thinking about retirement? And what potential opponents does he have for 2022? You mentioned Andy Ruiz when we were over on Maestro A Boxing, but Is that the only opponent for him? Is 2022 going to be great for him? Is he going to fight 2-3 times? Is he going to come back mid-year? Is he going to take some time off? Is this all just a jibber jabber gaslighting that Malik Scott is giving us?
I think that when you've been making $20 million a fight in that neighborhood since the Brazil fight, because let's not forget they had to pay him a lot of money, and by him I'm talking about Deontay Wilder, to keep him in the PBC universe, because Eddie Hearn, through Lou DiBella, was offering the big bag to get him over to DAZN. The big bag to get him over to DAZN. Right? And in order to keep him with the PBC, they had to offer him very substantial paydays to take on the likes of Brazil. Those days are over. There's no alternative offer right now on the table luring Deontay Wilder away from the PBC. I think that the AJ fight would still be a big fight in the UK, but AJ's tied up. AJ's about to take on Usyk in the second fight. By the way, I have Usyk winning that fight. But in terms of Deontay Wilder, look, I shared my screen when we were together on my channel just a few moments ago. You look down the rankings, Wilder's ranked by the WBC and by the WBA. And the only name ranked in either of those two organizations that is even close to being a pay-per-view fight for Deontay Wilder is Andy Ruiz Jr. And Andy Ruiz is signed also to the PBC and is also in need of a big-name opponent and is also coming off a pay-per-view. So you got two guys, two former world champions, signed to the PBC, coming off pretty big paydays, in need of a big name for a big fight that would likely do at least reasonable numbers on pay-per-view. I don't, Kenny, see another opponent for either of these two guys. I see them facing each other. And Brian said it himself on my channel, Big Brian from the 206, the boxing historian. It's a 50-50 fight. I think it's a 50-50 fight. Gun to head, I'd have to probably go Andy Ruiz.
That I think that could definitely be a 50-50 fight, but is that really the only fight for Deontay Wilder? Is Deontay Wilder really stuck with PBC? Wouldn't he be able to go to anywhere he'd like to go to? Is he handcuffed to PBC at the moment? Like, I think of a lot of other fighters in the heavyweight that will also make for a good fight with Deontay Wilder that would be lesser opposition than Andy Ruiz, that I see Deontay Wilder in his head favoring. Well, I'd rather fight these people than fight Andy Ruiz, and maybe fight Andy Ruiz later or something like that. Because in my head, Deontay Wilder's probably thinking, I want to knock out a few guys and try looking like the person that they thought I was, so I could line myself up with another fight, either against AJ, Usyk, or Fury, whoever has the belts. You're going to try to stay clean. You're not going to try to get a loss or a draw or just a bad performance from a dude like Andy Ruiz.
Let me ask you this. Is Deontay Wilder going to fight for $1 million?
I don't know. I don't be pocket watching. I have no idea what he's doing for his fights, any of that.
Unfortunately, whether we want to admit it or not, if you follow the English Premiership, you have to be up on the transfer value of football players. If you follow the NBA, you have to know who is a max contract guy and who's going to be on a 10-day contract and who's going to be moving from a max rookie deal to the next stage of their career. I don't like talking about purses and any more than the other guy, but unfortunately it's part of the equation on talking about whether or not fights are going to be made or not, because these guys fight for money. And I'll tell you right now, Deontay Wilder is not fighting for $1 million. He's not fighting for $2 million. He's not fighting probably even for $3 million. He wants to make big money to fight because he's already made a lot of money to fight. And he's not at a point in his career now where he's going to be going backwards. Look, Derek Chisora just made about $3 million for his last fight. I mean, Deontay Wilder's not going to be trying to make less than that. you know, and once that is in the equation, then you have to start thinking about whether or
Big
not the
names.
opponent is lucrative and has a name, right? Because he's not going to make $5 million fighting Ajit Kabayel. Just not going to happen. He's going to have to find a guy who brings some kind of a name that can be used to sell pay-per-views. And here's the other thing that the PBC does a lot, Kenny.
There's a few of them. After you finish, I'll say a few of them. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, here's another thing they like to do a lot. They love to pit the Chicano or the Mexican against the African American. They love doing that. Isaac Cruz against Tank Davis. Does anybody think that was just an accident that they went with a Mexican guy?
Nope.
And that they didn't put Tank Davis in against? You don't think there's an African American fighting between 130 and 135 that they could have put him in against? You don't think that the Chris Colbert fight would have done better business than Isaac Cruz? I mean, maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. I don't know. But the fact is that the PBC likes to do this whole ethnic versus ethnic thing. And they're not the only ones. Top Rank does it as well. So that's another thing, another reason I think that they would put up the Andy Ruiz name, because Andy Ruiz fits into that Mexican American, Chicano versus African American narrative. And again, you look up and down the list. I would love to see Daniel Dubois in against Wilder. I think that's a really intriguing fight, and I think it would be fireworks.
Definitely
fireworks.
And both guys are in danger in that fight, especially after Dubois with that eye thing against Joe Joyce. I think both men would definitely be in danger in that fight.
Right, but does it sell on pay-per-view? Probably not.
No.
You know, I see Tony Pugilist boy, my vegan brethren over there, bringing up Jared Anderson. Jared Anderson is a great talent. Jared Anderson would probably give serious problems to Deontay Wilder, but that's not a pay-per-view fight in the United States, and it's not risk versus reward in the favor of Wilder. That's a hell of a lot of risk for very little reward. If they put that fight on pay-per-view, as sad as this is, I don't know if it does 100,000, you know, and that's sad because that's a pretty good heavyweight fight. But, you know, the casual person doesn't know who Jared Anderson is.
Nope.
And the casual person has seen Andy Ruiz knock out Anthony Joshua, and he has a name off of that. Damn, I mean, DAZN made a documentary movie, executive produced by Sly Stallone, where he's in it, and Dolph Lundgren is in it, and celebrities are in it, talking about how exciting that fight was and talking about the story of that fight, to paraphrase Max Kellerman. So who else is out there that's pay-per-view level? It's really just Andy.
I got you.
You know?
Nah, I got you, man. I got you with a few right now.
Okay, let's hear it.
What about Joseph Parker and Derek Chisora? Big money Derek Chisora could fight him over in his hometown, you know? Yes, that's about it.
Derek Chisora is a UK pay-per-view that would get both of them paid. Does very little for his profile in the United States. Only guys like me and you know about Derek Chisora over here. He's not a big name guy. He could probably walk through the Bronx in Manhattan and, you know, without a problem. Matter of fact, even Deontay Wilder, as we've seen and many times have joked about it, can probably do that too, you know. It's not a big fight in the US. It would be a huge fight in the UK, and it would sell out the MEN Arena in Manchester, which is one of the biggest arenas in Europe, actually. That's not like a football stadium. It would sell out the O2 in London. You know, 20,000 people easy to see that fight. So that actually is a possibility, Kenny. That's a good one right there. But it's not a pay-per-view fight in the United States.
You know who I could see them throwing him against
Ooh.
and saying that it's a huge fight? Oh, Deontay Wilder, Luis Ortiz too.
No. Number one, Kenny. But remember, it would be 3. He's
You're
already
right. You're right.
twice, so that you're not selling that.
Trilogy.
You're not selling.
Trilogy.
It's tough to sell a trilogy when one guy's been knocked out twice. You know. Now, what was the other name you gave? You gave Chisora, and then the other name you gave was what?
Joseph Parker.
Not a sellable fight in the United States. Not a sellable fight, really. Is that a sellable fight in England? I mean, I know he's kind of semi-based out of the UK now, but Joseph Parker's, he's not really a big name. He's like an opponent for a guy who's a champion, who's a star.
I got a great one for
like
you.
Like an AJ.
I have an amazing one for you.
Okay, give me another name. Let's go.
This will be hilarious on Deontay Wilder's side.
Okay.
Deontay Wilder beating up on Huey Fury. Like, I beat up your family member, bro.
Yeah, that's actually funny if he gets a win against a Fury.
That's hilarious.
You know what would also be hilarious if Fury beats him, because that could happen too.
Oh, definitely.
I could definitely see Fury outboxing Deontay Wilder.
Then it'd be like beat up by 2 Furies. Oh my god.
That's a high risk, low reward proposition. So if I'm part of Team Wilder management, I'm definitely gonna have to pass.
Hey, makes sense.
Fight Down Podcast agrees and says Joseph Parker would be a good name to throw at Wilder. It's a good name from a boxing perspective for sure. I just don't think Fight Down, who by the way is also off the ropes. Salute to you, bro. I don't think that's a sellable pay-per-view fight in the United States that's gonna get Wilder $5 million or more, which is what I really think the minimum purse for Wilder is to get him back into the ring. I don't really see him fighting for less than $5 million. I don't.
Sounds like he needs to step out of his comfort zone and be willing to travel overseas.
Here's what needs to happen in the world of Deontay Wilder. If we're gonna go through with the proposition as you've laid out from Malik Scott.
I'm trying to understand where his thoughts,
Yeah, I know, and let's go down that thought path, right? He's trying to get his charge ready for another championship run. All right. He wants to get back into the mix as a trainer of a heavyweight champion of the world. Now, the path to that, as laid out by Team Maestro Management, I'm going to play management right now, is...
Did I get a job?
You take we might have to set this up and get into management. I don't know.
I think so.
A few people that I've been noticing on my channel that would be great team members in a management group. Like, they got some fantastic ideas. But you go after Andy Ruiz, right? You train for that knockout. That's what you go for. You're not outboxing Andy Ruiz over 12 rounds. You've already shown that you've got serious stamina issues as a fighter, especially in the last 2 fights. So you train him for that knockout, right? You train him to go in there and snipe Andy Ruiz. And you hope that you can get a fight with either AJ or Dillian White.
I think that's what he should be setting up for. I agree.
And I say that because AJ is going to be a blockbuster fight whenever it happens. AJ could lose to Usyk. That's still a big fight. People will pay to see that. That will net them good purses. All right. Dillian White, even if he loses to Fury, which I think he will, by the way.
Same.
Dillian White against Wilder is still a pay-per-view fight. It's still a O2 or MEN arena selling fight in England. I mean, those guys don't like each other. The pre-fight talk would be, very, very must-watch TV, right? And if you can beat either AJ or White at that point, now you've positioned yourself to take on an Usyk, and you just better hope that Usyk, if you're Maestro Management in this case, managing Team Wilder, you just better hope that Usyk can pull a rabbit out of the hat and beat Tyson Fury, because nobody's gonna want to see Fury Wilder 4. Okay, but you got two opponents right there that I've given you following up on Ruiz. You've got White and you've got AJ. And even if White or AJ lose their next fights, and I think they will. I think Usyk beats AJ, and I think White also is able to beat Tyson Fury. Those are two guys coming off losses that, if Wilder's coming off of a win, would be big fights in the UK. And Wilder's already shown he'd go out to the UK, go international. He was ready to fight Povetkin in Russia years back.
Well, I hope that he does decide that he wants to go overseas, because his playing management, his only route to another title and to success right now, or to money, how he wants, would be to continue fighting, not low level how he was doing in the beginning, but mid to high level opposition until he gets his shot against AJ, Usyk, or Fury 4. But yeah, I think we've gotten some pretty good answers on who we should see or would like to see against Deontay Wilder in the coming year, and we've broken down what Malik Scott's mentality has to be, with the comment that he said, which once again the comment is, it's a blessing to be in his position, that this should be a great year for Deontay Wilder. But since we did beat that up, I'm gonna stay in the heavyweight division right now with the next topic. AJ Usyk to be set for April, says Eddie Hearn. AJ was seen training with Mayweather and looking for new trainers while on vacation in Dubai. My thoughts. What do we think about AJ not being stubborn no more and willing to look for another trainer, and also willing to potentially look at if Mayweather can help him? Because I know this is not the first time that Mayweather offered help to Anthony Joshua. Mayweather's offered help to so many different fighters several different times that he always gets shut down. But this time it seems like Anthony Joshua may potentially take him serious. There was a little video clip where Mayweather's on the side, like, and Anthony Joshua's just looking like the same old Anthony Joshua that we saw get beat up by Usyk. But yeah, so what are your thoughts regarding that? What are your thoughts regarding Mayweather? What are your thoughts regarding Mayweather training him, if that does happen? And if that does not happen, who would you like to see train Anthony Joshua?
If I'm a fighter, I'm not looking for Mayweather to train me at all. Mayweather has proven himself to be a very self-centered, highly egotistical, to the level of narcissism, actually, person.
Definitely a narcissist.
Who seems to always need to put himself in the center of attention, and who seeks to always dominate the spotlight and the shine, even when he's involved in promoting his own fighters like Tank Davis. How many times have we seen him doing that same thing with Tank Davis, kind of hovering over him or in front of him, giving him some instructions? I mean, how many other fighters have you seen take advice in the middle of championship fights from their promoter, who gets up from his seat and goes and interrupts the corner man and speak over him, like between rounds in title fights. Like, we've seen him do that multiple times now with Tank Davis. I guess he gets to do it because the trainers don't want to like step up and like defend themselves, I guess, and don't want to get fired or whatever the case may be. But I would not trust that Floyd is interested in helping me. I would believe that Floyd is mostly interested in fights with teenagers and on helicopter helipads in Dubai, or exhibition matches against other teenagers in Japan, or exhibitions against Logan Paul, who is now saying that Mayweather hasn't paid him his money for the exhibition fight he did with him. I mean, the dude just seems to have a lot going on in the world of Floyd Mayweather. Can you imagine him devoting himself to Anthony Joshua for 8 to 12 weeks for a training camp?
No, he has his hands involved in too many things.
And what exactly is Floyd's track record of preparing his fighters for big fights? Like, when's the last time you've even seen one of his fighters in a big fight?
You're definitely right, brother.
Who has a Mayweather Promotions fighter taken on the level of an Alexander Usyk, on the level of a three belt major championship fight? It has yet to happen. We have yet to ever see a Mayweather Promotions fighter fight in a fight of this magnitude. So why would I be here believing that Floyd can devote himself for 8 to 12 weeks to someone who's not himself? You see, the trainer has to put the fighter first. The trainer leaves his family. The trainer goes away to camp. Look at what Sugar Hill does. He goes all the way to England and lives in one of Tyson Fury's homes to start camp with Tyson Fury, and then they come over to the United States, at which point he's not training in Detroit. He's training in Vegas, again, away from his family, isolated, devoting himself and his time to Tyson Fury. Do you really see Floyd Mayweather doing that with Anthony Joshua?
Definitely not. He's too full of himself. He can't get himself out of his head. Definitely not.
So that's the problem. And yeah, I also agree with Tony here. I see you in the chat, Tony. I mean, Tony, you're 100% correct. Floyd has zero resume as a trainer. His ability as a trainer in fights essentially consists of going into the corner of his fighter, interrupting what's happening in the corner, giving instructions from the sideline, shouting like a parent at a youth soccer game, or a parent at an AAU basketball game.
This is a great point by Samster.
Coaching from the sidelines, right, Kenny? I mean, you don't see him involved in actual coaching. You coached youth sports. Doesn't he remind you of that parent when you're coaching your middle school baseball team like you used to, Kenny, and the parent is out there in the crowd yelling instructions like he's the coach?
Oh, it happened all the time. I used to have those parents stay away from my dugout and stay away from anywhere behind the plate, and they had to go stand behind at the outfield. So I can't stand for that, and I don't know how I forgot what his name is. Tank's trainer does stand for that.
Calvin Ford.
There we go, Calvin Ford.
I don't do it either.
Yeah, I would hate to see that happen to Anthony Joshua. So I'm 100% going to have to sit here and agree with you and tell you that I wouldn't like to see Floyd Mayweather train Anthony Joshua, because he would try to take credit for everything, and that would look so poor on Anthony Joshua if it did occur. But Samster has a pretty good point here. He says Joshua would be repeating Wilder's mistake by taking a former boxer who has no notable training experience. Let's hope he doesn't do that. That's very, very factual. Learn from not only your mistakes, but from other people's mistakes as well, especially somebody in his own division.
Why it would be worse than Wilder? Because at least in Malik Scott, Wilder had someone who literally paused his life and devoted himself to the guy he was training.
That's
Malik
true.
Scott moved to Alabama. Malik Scott essentially lived under quarantine with Deontay Wilder for months, right? Because he was training him for one fight, then that fight was delayed when Fury got COVID. Then he trained him again. So they had like 2 training camps together where Malik Scott was away from his family, living with Deontay Wilder, training Deontay Wilder day after day. Do you actually see Floyd doing that with AJ?
Definitely not.
No,
He's
I
too
don't see.
selfish.
No, there's no way that's happening.
He's too
He's going to
selfish.
be out doing exhibitions and commercials for squirt guns and all kinds of other stuff that I've been put on to thanks to the brother Ring IQ, my brother Julius, and his channel. Okay, so I'm not seeing it, Kenny. So here's what Maestro Management is going to do.
What trainers Maestro Management hiring?
Maestro Management, believe it or not, we're talking about AJ right now. We're talking about AJ, right?
Yeah. Who's Maestro Management gonna hire to train AJ for his fight against Usyk?
The person who I would hire as Maestro Management to train AJ, 2 names. I'm looking for a very offensive-minded coach who does not have any A-list boxers that are going to be distracting him and taking away from his time. All right. And who is going to be able to bring out the most offensive kind of style out of AJ.
Can't use Sugar Hill.
Nope, not using Sugar Hill. So
Bomac.
Nope.
I like Bomac.
I like Bomac, but he's already got guys, and he's got Terrence Crawford.
Does he have any big fights that are coming up?
Here's my name. And the other thing too is there's only a certain amount of I need somebody even more offensive than Bomac. I need somebody even more offensive than that. I need and I
Eddie
think
Reynoso, who trains Canelo to go for the knockout every fight.
Canelo's trainer Eddie Reynoso trains another big heavyweight in Andy Ruiz. So you can't have conflict.
I forgot about that. Yeah,
so
I forgot about that.
The names I have for you are Joe Goosen, the guy who trained Areola, okay, or trains Areola. I think Areola's retired now. The other name I have for you, believe it or not, is Mark Ramsey. I said this months ago. Mark Ramsey's a great coach. There's no conflict of interest. He's going to be able to devote himself 100% to Anthony Joshua, and he's got a very offensive style. Who's Mark Ramsey? For those of you who don't know Mark Ramsey off the top of your head, that's Artur Beterviev's coach. That's the guy that used to coach Jean Pascal for many years. He's out of Montreal in Quebec.
Bite Down Podcast says, how about Virgil Hunter?
No.
Ronnie Shields?
No. See,
I'm liking. I'm very much liking how Maestro Management is consistent and very strong with their decisions. I'm all for that.
I need a very more of a low key trainer. All right, that's not training a whole big stable of guys. Let's not forget, Virgil Hunter trains Tony Yoka, another heavyweight, the Olympic gold medalist out of France. Let's not forget, Virgil Hunter also trains Joshua Boazzi, high-level light heavyweight out of England, and other fighters as well. He's training Mario Barrios right now to take on Keith Thurman. Too busy. I need offense. Also, Virgil Hunter is a very defensive coach too, by the way. I need a guy who's going to be training AJ for the old AJ, the Charles Martin AJ, the Dillian White AJ, okay? The AJ that went in there and was super offensive before he got clipped by Klitschko and tried to, it seems like, adopt the Klitschko style ever since. Mark Ramsey. Maestro Management is picking Mark Ramsey as AJ's coach. That's who I'm picking.
How about Mark Breland?
Mark Breland appears to be a skills coach who has a very soft demeanor in the corner, which I think is great for certain fighters. So he's going to bring out the really good skills in AJ, especially in terms of jabbing, straight punches, setting up things with feints, etc. Um, but he's a little too quiet for what AJ needs right now. AJ needs a rocket kind of, you know, firecracker in the corner. You
My
know,
my last question.
I'm a huge Mark Breland fan, as everyone who knows my channel knows.
Oh, definitely. That's why I asked. That's why I asked what you thought about Mark Breeden coaching him, especially now that he's not messing with Deontay Wilder anymore. But my last question: Eddie Hearn said the fight is looking like it's gonna be set for April, and AJ is looking for a new trainer right now. Do you think that 4 months is enough time with a new trainer to change up your style or to alter your style? My thoughts and my opinion, I'm gonna tell you, definitely not. I think if I was AJ, I'd be like, no, we need to set this fight up for June. I need at least 6 months of training differently, not only muscle training differently, however it is that my trainer and coach are going to be telling me the training. I also need at least 6 months for my muscle memory to kick in and for me to not kick back to the old AJ once I get punched a few hard times.
Well, I agree with you, but if he was going to do that, he should have just stepped aside and allowed Fury to take on Usyk with a guaranteed shot at the winner.
I mean, I'm disagree with
that,
you. I'd be greedy.
that would have given him extra time, and then he would have stepped into an even bigger fight than the fight he's about to step into now, which is still a very big fight. But he said he wants it in April. Do I think it's enough time to do a total AJ 3.0? Because I know Kenny was a huge fan of AJ 1.0. Kenny, people don't even realize how big of a fan Kenny was of AJ 1.0. I used to get into so many discussions with Kenny about AJ. AJ would literally come into the gym where we used to work out with each other and do like AJ style workouts from like AJ training videos. Kenny was a huge fan of AJ 1.0. AJ 2.0, I'm talking about the Carlos Takam AJ, the Joseph Parker AJ, the Andy Ruiz rematch AJ. Kenny hasn't been such a big fan of that AJ. Now, can we get to AJ 3.0 in 4 months? I don't think so. But if you want to get your best shot at doing it, I'm going with Mark Ramsey. You need a total shift change. All right? We're going out of England. We're leaving the English speaking world. We're going to get Mark Ramsey, the Quebecois, French speaking trainer of absolute savages like Arthur Beterbiev. We're gonna go up into Quebec and train in the snow and out there in isolation, in some remote location, like like this is a Rocky movie, right? And we're gonna just isolate, complete cultural change, complete I'm out of my comfort zone change, and prepare for what will have to be trench warfare against Usyk.
I'd go train in the high altitude mountains of Mexico like Canelo does. Do something that one of the greatest current fighters is doing. You know? The high altitude, the hard breathing. He has trouble. He starts gassing out after a certain round. His breathing goes bad. The high altitude would definitely help with that.
One thing Quebec is known for is its mountains. I mean, people go there to go skiing. They have high altitude up there. Like, you got to get out of your comfort zone, complete cultural shift, get out of the UK media market, get out of the English language, a North American media market, get out there to Quebec, right? Isolate yourself, fly in your sparring partners, and you are just preparing for battle with Mark Ramsey and his team because you're not beating Alexander Usyk in a boxing match. Your only chance against Alexander Usyk is to, get in there, step in there with that stiff, strong jab, right? You got to remove the mental worry of the feints and they getting countered by Usyk's overhand left, right? And getting discombobulated with the footwork and moving around at angles. And you've literally got to train yourself to engage in trench warfare.
I agree with you.
And is that not what Baturviev does, Kenny?
That guy is the real definition of a tank, not Mr. Davis.
Right. I mean, you think about the video footage of the montage. Think about if this was an HBO 24/7 level stuff. You got him with Mark Ramsey and the whole training team out there in the mountains in Quebec.
I hear you. I'm completely for it. He needs something that's going to help him work on his breathing and his cardio. Pardon the sirens in my background. Apparently something's happening. New York City police, you know how they do. But I think we've beat up AJ and his trainer and where he should train enough. I agree he should train in the mountains. I'm okay with the trainer you selected or one of the others mentioned like Reynoso or Breland, but Reynoso, there's that conflict like we spoke of. So but that's enough about that topic. I do want to move on to our next topic, which is some social media's favorite star. Some people who love social media is their favorite star. That's your boy Ryan Garcia, and how he's chasing Pitbull Cruz as if he was the Pitbull, or is trying to make it seem as if that is the case on social media. So Ryan Garcia has been posting lots of tweets and stuff telling Cruz to just sign the contract. They sent contracts over and all this other stuff. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't think that Cruz would run from a Ryan Garcia fight. At the end of the day, that'll be a great fight and another big payday for a dude like Cruz and another shot at gaining more popularity. So I don't know if it's true that Cruz is running from that fight, but I do want to ask you, before I give my thoughts, I want to ask you your thoughts about the fight. Can he, do you think that this fight is more winnable for Cruz or Ryan Garcia after the year layoff? Is it a smart decision for Ryan Garcia to be coming back to such a situation and a high volume puncher? Yes, he's very small, but a high volume puncher that seems to have good defense against Tank. Is it wise for him to go against Isaac Cruz after such a big layoff? I don't think so. But whatever, if he's gonna come back, better come back to the fire because he missed a year of opportunities. Go for it, Maestro.
I think that, believe it or not, he's a perfect opponent for a comeback fight for Ryan Garcia. He's very short. Ryan Garcia loves to box tall, and there's a huge gap in hand speed. And Ryan loves to throw those hooks to the head. He loves to, and if Isaac Cruz defends the head, Ryan Garcia loves to throw those hooks to the body. And Ryan Garcia also loves those uppercuts. Isaac put in a really good performance against Tank, but Tank is a very short fighter. He just looked taller and bigger because of how small Isaac Cruz is. And, people are giving him a whole lot of credit because of the performance against Tank. But at the end of the day, he lost the fight. It was closer than a lot of people thought, but he clearly lost the fight. At no point did he have Tank hurt or out on his feet or looking like, to me, he was going to lose the fight. And, but because of that, he's got a name. And, his manager, Sean Gibbons, is out there, acting all big and making all kind of like demands of Golden Boy. And it's kind of crazy, actually. You guys should check out Ring IQ because he kind of reviewed it. I mean, we don't even know how well that fight did on pay-per-view for these guys to be making like these huge demands and talking about how, the fight has to take place on pay-per-view and not on a platform that nobody watches. It's very interesting to me. I said this on an episode of the Roundtable before, that these older guys still don't seem to get the idea that people our generation and younger just don't watch cable television or really even purchase pay-per-views. Like, the only reason I do is because I have a channel and I cover the sport. Your average younger person has Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, oftentimes because their families have it and they share it and everything else. The Zone is one of those kind of platforms. The Zone is like Spotify. Pay-per-view is like going to Tower Records and buying a CD, or if you're in England and watching us, HMV. Like, nobody goes to these places anymore. People now consume music on YouTube Music, on Spotify, etc. That is what the Zone is. So, Usyk Cruz and his management team need to get with the 21st century here and stop acting as if this is still 1998 and people are only consuming big fights on pay-per-view. That's number one. But I do have to say that I think it's a perfect stylistic matchup, honestly, for Ryan Garcia. I just don't know where Ryan Garcia is right now. I don't know what Ryan Garcia's level is right now in terms of his dedication and commitment to the sport.
Yeah, me either. But he did say that he is coming back, that he's coming back stronger than ever in this coming year, and I hope so. He's been missing for long enough in the sport of boxing. The guy is skilled, but he just makes himself look bad by the shit he says. They call him Lion Ryan, and
He still calls him that.
yeah, he's a fucking a pull out god, and not in a sexual way. And he pulls out of so many fights. He needs to and says that he wants to take a fights, and supposedly contracts get sent over and he never signs the contracts. Yada yada yada. The fights just need to start happening. The excuses need to stop happening. And I think that the fight versus him and Cruz is a great comeback fight. It to me, Cruz is, whether he did semi well against Tank or not, I still think that Cruz is not a top level caliber fighter the way that people want to view him because of his performance against Tank. And I still think that Ryan Garcia should go in there and be able to handle this guy. I think that Ryan Garcia wants to fight him so bad because he's like a cherry pick type of opponent. That's what Ryan Garcia is seeing him as. Until he gets punched in the face in the ring, he's going to continue seeing him as a cherry pick opponent.
That's what Tank saw him as, Kenny.
Exactly. And because Tank didn't look so good against him, Ryan Garcia wants to take the fight so that he could smash the cherry. Crush the cherry. You know what I'm saying? That it is what it is. I think that that's a winnable fight for Ryan Garcia. I think it's a good comeback fight. I would love to see it happen and signed. And I would love to see Ryan Garcia move away from this nonsense of pulling out of fights and saying that he's suffering through mental health issues, but then every time that anybody wins a fight that's near his weight class division or that's in competition with him, he wants to come out and say, yeah, but I'll knock you out though. Yeah, but I'll knock you out though. Your fight was whack. I'll knock you out though. I would have knocked him out sooner. He needs to get out of that state, and it just is what it is.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I mean, just people have to realize that, like, boxing has always been about bravado and bragging and boastfulness, and I tend to not necessarily be as critical of Ryan Garcia about that. My major thing with Ryan Garcia is that I'd like to see him fight more often. I mean, he went pretty much all of 2021 without a fight because his fight against Luke Campbell was like the first week of 2021, and we haven't seen him fight yet since then. So I'd like to see him against someone, even if it's Pitbull Cruz. I mean, there are other people I'd rather like him to see. Like, forget Pitbull Cruz. Why don't you just fight Tank Davis?
Because Tank Davis is not going to take that fight.
Yeah.
PBC, Al Heyman, who's the other guy? Ellerby, Mayweather, the whole team. They're gonna say no. There's too much risk in that fight. Why would you fight Ryan for let's say I don't know random number. I'm just gonna say let's say why would you fight Ryan for 10 million? I don't know how much he earns. I said
Yeah.
random number when you can fight Joe Schmo for 10 million.
But
You know what I'm saying?
that's the problem that Tank Davis and them are facing now. They're no
Yep.
longer making big money to fight these dudes. This last pay-per-view was a flop. Like he's fighting right now for about $1 million a fight. You know, after you throw in taxes and paying your trainer and your management and everything else,
Little
I
money.
mean, you're not coming even probably close to $500,000, right? So you kind of they've kind of run out now of room on this highway of we're just going to put him in against everybody and anyone and expect, or sorry, not everybody, we're just going to put him against anyone and expect it to sell on pay-per-view. Like it seems like the jig is up with that. I don't even honestly know how well the Rolly Romero fight would have done.
I think it would have done very well actually.
I mean, what's very well these days, because the Isaac Cruz, sorry, not Isaac Cruz, the Mario Barrios pay-per-view did like, what was it, like 200 and something thousand, you know? So, you know, I don't know what it would have done. It probably would have done better than this last one did, because this last one did so badly. They won't even tell us how badly it did. Right.
I think it'll do better than the Isa Cruz one, and I think it'll do better than the one versus Mario Barrios as well versus Rolly. Not because Rolly is so great, but because Rolly has actually built a name for him under Mayweather Promotions by just talking trash on YouTube, by YouTube and by having a good trash talking mouth. He's gained a name for
Why
himself,
does it? Why
not
does
by
it?
his skill.
Maybe Ryan should fight Rolly then. How about
You,
that?
you know what? They've been trying to Rolly's been trying to fight Ryan forever now. They had a couple sparring sessions when they were both younger. And you know, you could say that it was a very back and forth sparring session. And you could say that Ryan is ducking or scared of homie of Rolly. But just because of his actions. But it doesn't make sense to me as to why he would be scared or ducking Rolly, because Rolly doesn't really have much accomplishments under his belt. He may have some power, and Ryan felt that power in sparring, but the guy doesn't really have wisdom or experience in the ring, and that makes for an easy opponent that has a big name and could be big money for you.
I mean, Sam has a good point. You know, I don't think the money team can afford Ryan either, which is why Golden Boy and the Zone need to make the offer.
That makes complete
I don't
sense.
disagree with you, Sam. I mean, but like at a certain point, the money team has got to realize that they're not making any money off of these pay-per-views. Like, if Floyd Mayweather was really making good money off of TMT and Mayweather Promotions, like, would he need to be fighting in these exhibition fights? Why doesn't he just live the life of a big-time major promoter? Like, you don't see Eddie Hearn doing these exhibitions. You know?
I hear something about the taxes. That's what I've heard, that he's paying crazy amounts of taxes, and he is broke, and he has money tied up in investments, and he needs to find out where to get more money to pay these taxes.
Yeah, Marion, I've heard the same thing of like, yeah, I mean, that's probably why these pay-per-views have to be so expensive, because they sell so few of them, right? 70,000 times 200 grand is like what? I mean, sorry, 70 times 200 grand works out to what? Like 14 million, I think.
A lot of money.
And then half of that, or let's say close to half of it, the fighters don't see. That's for sure. So yeah, you can still get a decent payday off of that if you do the math, I guess. You know, a lot of it goes to production, a lot of it goes to distribution. The promoters have to eat. Then you got the managers and the taxes. So it's like, yeah, we're no longer at what Tyson, Lewis, Holyfield, De La Hoya, these kind of guys used to do. But I guess there still is money in pay-per-view. The question is, did Tank Barrios, sorry, not Tank Barrios, did Tank against Isaac Cruz even do anywhere near 200,000? I don't think that it did.
We have no idea,
Well,
and as that commercial says, the world may never know.
yeah, you're right. But at the end of the day, Kenny, if it did get anywhere near that, I think we would have heard about it.
Yeah, you're right. They would have the numbers would have came out already. It is what it is. Whatever. Tank Davis, low numbers. Ryan Garcia, still not boxing and lying to the public. And seems like he wants to cherry pick to come back, which he should. Speaking of cherry pick, let's keep it moving. Lying Ryan, whatever. Hopefully he stops lying in 2022 and comes back strong. The guy is skilled. I like to see the guy fight. It is what it is. But moving over to another potential cherry pick opponent, I heard you mention it earlier, and I slightly know how you feel. But we have Edgar Verlanga versus Steve Rose, which has been set for March 19th. Uh, I know you're not too much of a fan of this fight because you're not too much of a fan of Steve Rose and his career and the weight classes that he's fighting in. But you know what? Steve Rose has knocked out his last few opponents. I think they're trying to big him up to give him one big fight, and they're trying to put a semi well known or not well known, a semi known name on Edgar Berlanga's resume. I think that's what they're doing with Steve Rose. It's like, well, Steve Rose fought Triple G. Edgar Berlanga fought Triple G. Steve Rose did, excuse me, Triple G did this to Steve Rose. Edgar Berlanga did this to Steve Rose. You know, I'm pretty sure he's going to try to finish him earlier, stop him earlier than Triple G did. And I'm pretty sure that's a potential hook, a potential fishing line and hook, trying to get a Triple G fight in a year or so whenever they think that Berlanga may be ready. Your thoughts? I know you're not so much of a fan of the Steve Rose.
My thought, Kenny, is that you did a very good job of doing what Al Pacino did back in the day, and that's play devil's advocate. I don't know if anyone's seen that movie, but he played the lawyer's devil in the movie, and it was one of his probably lesser known roles. That was a great job of devil's advocate. Because, I mean, what are we doing here? Like, what are you trying to prove exactly? All right. Steve Rose is a guy who fought Gennady Golovkin for a title at 160. All right. In the fight that most people know him for. Has Steve Rose fought at 168 pounds before? Yes, he has. Who did he fight at 168 pounds? Very low level competition in various parts of Canada. You know, various parts of Canada. Places that people who've even lived in Canada, like I have never even heard of. And you're looking at his last win, Kenny. The knockout he got. It's against the guy that's 16-8-0 named Christopher Booker. Like nobody knows these people.
You're right about that. 100% right about that.
Christopher Booker, a Philly fighter, coming off of a loss to Andre Durrell, third round knockout going into that fight against Steve Rose. And that Andre Durrell fight was a comeback fight for Andre Durrell after a 2-year layoff. Like, this isn't a high-level guy, and I just don't understand what you're trying to prove if you Edgar Berlanga by fighting a guy like Steve Rose, because right now, I mean,
they need him to get another knockout, bro. He got floored in his last fight.
Now, I mean, the dude that I'm watching at 168 is a dude I've been watching for a while now, and that's David Morrell Jr. You know, that's David Morrell Jr. Like, I might just put on the David Morrell Jr. fight and watch that instead of watching Steve Rose against Berlanga. But you know what the problem with Steve Rose is as an opponent?
What's that?
What if Steve Rose makes you look bad?
I hope Steve Rose doesn't make him look bad. They putting Steve Rose in there to make him look good.
I mean, what if Steve Rolls makes this guy look bad? I mean, that's not a good look for Berlanga, is it? You
No,
know?
not at all.
So you might as if I'm Berlanga's management, if he's the goods, let's see that he's the goods. Why don't you fight somebody ranked at 168?
I don't think he's ready for that. Especially, see, all right, look, Ryan Garcia got knocked down, and he took an entire year off for mental health. Berlanga got knocked down, and he's not taking an entire year off for mental health. But what he is trying to do is get his mind right by getting an opponent that somebody like Triple G has fought and knocked down, and trying to knock him out in an earlier round, so that he could big himself up. He could bring his brains and his heart back, and not feel like he needs to take a year off for mental health like Ryan Garcia did. I think that's what they're doing. They're trying to set him up to they're trying to put a name on a name on his record, and potentially set him up for a future Triple G situation. And also bring up his spirit, his heart, his mentality, because he got knocked down last fight and he was on the ground talking about and trying to act like a tough guy, but he still got knocked down, and he was letting that dude have everything. He was Berlanga was swinging for the fences against that dude, and the dude was eating it, and it was a great fight.
Can
So
you do me a favor and just hook up a wrench in the chat? Let's just get this over with.
I got you. Yeah, I
Just
looked it up
we're
earlier.
only getting
There
we're
you go.
the bots coming out. And I want to take care of that as I see.
Got you.
Just right click on
I
my comment and just
I
add.
added you as a moderator.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so I see what you're saying. I mean, there's got to be somebody in these rankings, though, surely that they could put him up against. And if they don't have that type of confidence in him, then really at that point, it's like, why are we watching this dude on ESPN?
Well, they did a great job building him. They're
They
trying to
did.
keep the viewership at the level where it is, and not let us see a weakness.
But the problem is we've already lost the streak. The streak is done now. So, I mean, if they were continuing the streak and going for that like record, I forget who had the record. I know Edwin Valero was going for it at a certain point. I'd have to look up and do a little research to figure out who has the record for consecutive first round knockouts. But my whole thing is, the streak is done. So I thought, now that the streak is done, now we're getting off the different business, right? And I see guys in the top 10 over here that maybe, I don't know, can you not bring out a Rocky Fielding? He's got a name.
Is he ready for Rocky Fielding?
Canelo blasted him out of there, so maybe you could at least, let's see how you would do against Rocky Fielding.
Right? Is he ready for Rocky Fielding?
Jesse Hart went in there and mixed it up with Zurdo a few times. Let's see how you do against the Jesse Hart. I don't know. Maybe I'm asking for too much, right?
I just think he doesn't have the in the ring and the round experience. As you saw, most of his fights have been first round knockouts, and the first guy that took him fairly far, and it wasn't a first round knockout, he got knocked down by in the later rounds. So I just think that he needs some time. He needs some time in development, and I think his team sees that, because they tried to accelerate him and put him on accelerated pass and put him against his last opponent, whose name I cannot remember off the top of my head right now. But the guy definitely gave him hell in that ring, and that was at one point looking like a very losable fight for Berlanga. So I think his team sees it. His management sees it. They see the flaws. It's like Tank. You see the flaws in Tank. So they don't want to put Tank in against Lions, because they're going to lose their cash cow. He's going to lose some popularity, some fame, because today's boxing fans are all about the O. I think that's the situation with Berlanga. His team saw that they put him against some good opposition, and he didn't look too good. It was a 12-round fight. He was trying to knock the guy out for the entire fight, and he couldn't knock him down or knock him out. Or did he knock him down? I don't remember, but he couldn't knock him out. So I think they realized the situation, and they're trying to not speed up Berlanga too fast and put him in a situation where he could get put out of there. And one thing before I pass the mic back to you regarding Berlanga and Rolls, had a question, by Marion Brown, which definitely stuck in interest in my head. Do you remember what the prices of pay-per-views used to be back in the day? Because I definitely do not.
No, I don't. And the other thing too is that even if I did know what they were, we'd have to like calculate for inflation. You know, like we're talking about times when like a gallon of gas was like in the dollar plus range versus where it is right now. We're talking about a time when like, you know, your regular McDonald's meal was like $3.99 or $4 or whatever, and now it's obviously a lot more than that. So, you know, we'd have to also calculate for inflation to give you like a proper fight of that. But that's a good question. That's something that I should probably look into for another time. You know, um, something I should look into for another time. You know, I'm personally just hoping that everything goes over to the zone. Um, I'm going to be honest with you. I like the model of paying that yearly fee. You know,
Yeah.
for those who can't do the yearly fee, the monthly, and then you just have everything on your platform. You know, I like that personally.
This is
I don't mind watching stuff on ESPN either, but I don't like pay per view. I hate pay per view.
I agree. I agree. I hate pay-per-view, and then the subscription-based plans are much better. And also, why not just make a contract with TV and just have TV pay you? They pay big money. You know,
Oh, that's the issue. But the problem, Kenny, is that guys like Luis Ortiz and Charles Martin see themselves as bigger than what they are. Like that fight, that entire card should have been on Fox. The
they do see themselves bigger.
the pre pay per view fight was on Fox. Like if I'm Luis Ortiz or Tank Davis, right? I would rather fight on Fox in front of a whole lot of people than behind a paywall and have very few people watch me. Because at the end of the day, how many endorsements does Tank Davis have?
No idea.
Have you ever seen Tank Davis endorsing a product?
Nope.
Right? I mean, I could be crazy, but to me, like, I think he'd probably get at least a few endorsement deals if he was fighting on like regular television and like millions of people were watching.
I don't think the money team wants him wearing anybody else's stuff or getting endorsements. So wearing anything that's not the money team branded or GTD branded or whatever.
Yeah, well, the movie team isn't making any money though.
They're
That's
not, but they're trying to by keeping their name out there and trying to keep their name relevant. It is what it is.
I mean, you know why Giannis and these guys have endorsement deals, because people see them on television.
Yeah.
Giannis's matches were or matches. If his games were on pay per view and 100,000 people were watching them, he wouldn't have major endorsement deals. You know.
I agree.
So it's like you want to be on a platform where, like, yeah, you're making money the box, but where you're also growing your brand in other areas. You know.
So
Personally, that's how I would look at it.
to finish up and close out with Berlanga, right? Let me ask you one last question, because regarding the pay-per-views and the money and endorsement, I'm completely on board with you. So I don't even want to add on, because I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna repeat the same thing you said, because I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Yeah.
So with Berlanga, the last question that I have to close out the Berlanga Rose March 19th conversation is: does a win, all right? Does a 12 round win do anything for Berlanga versus a knockout win? Does it do anything for his record? Does it do anything for his career and his fame and popularity?
So this is the problem that Berlanga faces going into this fight. And yeah, I mean, I should retract what I said earlier, because it was a lie, and I don't like to lie to you or to anybody, especially when I'm talking about boxing. I obviously will watch the Berlanga Rose fight. I'm obviously not going to watch a replay of the David Morrell Jr. fight, although I have watched that fight repeatedly because it was a great performance. I think all of his performances have been great performances. Alantez Fox, the Casares fight. But this is the problem with the Berlanga fight that's coming up with Steve Rolls. If Berlanga loses, it's a terrible look for Berlanga. If he wins, it's not that great of a look for Berlanga. I mean, if it goes the distance, it's not a very good look. If he knocks the guy out any less definitively than Triple G did at middleweight, it's not a great look. It's a guy that most people have never heard of. It's not a guy who has held a title. It's a guy who's in the later stages of his career. I'd rather see him take on like some fellow like up and coming undefeated guy at 168 than this. I mean, I think the guy that I would compare him to in terms of development shouldn't even be Morrell Jr. because Morrell Jr. is like leap and bounds ahead of him. But look at the way Brandon Lee is being brought along. They step up the competition each time. He looks better and better each time. I think Brandon Lee's been brought along very well, and he's fighting on television. So, it is what it is. But one thing I will say about Berlanga that's positive is that he did get that knockout streak going. It was on ESPN. He had a lot of people excited. I was talking about him a lot. And at least we don't have to watch him behind a paywall. He's on ESPN, which is a good thing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I don't think I really don't I don't think a 12-round victory does anything for Berlanga. I think only early fight knockout does something for him. It does something for his emotions, it does something for his mind, it does something for his record, and it does something for his popularity and the fans. You have a big population of boxing fans that aren't like the degenerate boxing fans, the exaggerated fans. You got some very casual, regular fans in boxing, and those guys watch boxing for knockouts and stuff like that. And I know for a fact that if a knockout happened, his viewership and his popularity is 100% going to increase. I don't see that decreasing. So I think the only thing he needs in that fight is a early knockout for his own sakes. Do not go rounds with Steve Rose. Please don't. It's gonna look bad. So, next topic of conversation is Anthony Yarde. We both at one point very thought that Anthony Yarde was, real, that he was serious, that he was the future in that division. When Anthony Yarde fought Kovalev, I had Anthony Yarde winning before the fight. I was like, there's no way old man Kovalev got anything on Anthony Yarde. And Anthony Yarde gassed out there. Anthony Yarde got beat by a jab. He got knocked out by a jab at the end of the fight. He gassed out. It is what it is. I lost a lot of belief in Anthony Yarde at that point. But why am I bringing up Anthony Yarde? Because Anthony Yarde and his team say that they are ready for Joe Smith Jr. Now, ask me, and not big in like I'm not saying this because I think Joe Smith Jr. is the greatest or such a big challenge, or because I think Anthony Yarde can't handle him. But what about beating Lyndon Arthur tells Anthony Yarde that he's ready for the type of pounding that Joe Smith Jr. is going to bring? Joe Smith Jr. reminds me in size, if I'm correct, reminds me in size a little bit of Kovalev. Kovalev washed Anthony Yarde up. Is the question for you, Maestro?
Yeah.
Is Anthony Yarde ready for Joe Smith Jr. showdown?
It's a
With your boy Atunde.
It's a very good question because we've seen so many different levels of Anthony Yarde. We've seen the guy that The Rock was tweeting about ahead of the Kovalev fight that was looking like he would just destroy everyone in front of him, to a guy that got stopped by Kovalev, to a guy that got beat by Lyndon Arthur, who essentially fought him with a jab, to then a guy who rematched Lyndon Arthur and knocked out Lyndon Arthur brutally. Uh, so I mean, what I'm really trying to say is that he's been inconsistent, right? At the same time, Joe Smith Jr. isn't really the greatest fighter out there. I mean, he's obviously lost multiple times. I actually had him losing his last fight against Glassov, which brings me to the other point about where would this fight take place? Because, I think he got very, very biased home cooking judging when he fought the Russian Glassov in the United States. Would Anthony Yarde get a fair shake? Because I don't see Anthony Yarde knocking out Joe Smith Jr. Joe Smith Jr. is a tough dude. That can take a punch to the head and to the body. I
And
don't
he comes at dudes with a lot of power and hits
a
too.
whole lot of power. So it's definitely a very good fight. I am not yet convinced that Anthony Yarde is top tier at 175. I mean,
Me either.
it's even debatable whether he's the best light heavyweight in his own country at this point in England. I mean, I don't think it's a guarantee that he beats Callum Johnson. I don't think it's a guarantee that he beats Craig Richards. I don't think that's a guarantee that he beats Joshua Buatsi. So how can I go from I don't know if it's a guarantee that you beat your domestic level competition to it's a guarantee that you're going to beat Joe Smith Jr., the WBO light heavyweight champ. You know what I mean? So, prove yourself against Buatsi. Prove yourself against Craig Richards. Prove yourself against Callum Johnson, the latter of which is a easier fight to make because Callum Johnson is signed to the same promoter, Queensbury Promotions, Frank Warren. But, prove that and then take on a guy for a world title. That's what I think personally. Like I'm not yet sold off of the last performance against Lyndon Arthur, especially considering
Me either.
I think Lyndon Arthur just fought the wrong matchup. I mean, why was he playing rope-a-dope on the ropes, absorbing body shots? Like, it was the body shot that actually hurt him in the first fight. Like, if you're Lyndon Arthur, you should be boxing on your toes, showing a lot of movement, doing your herky-jerky jab feint, herky-jerky jab, right hand, trying to frustrate Arthur's style of boxing. Like, I don't understand why Lyndon Arthur was literally being a stationary punching bag against the ropes against the guy that literally needed that in order to experience success in that fight.
And he took advantage of it. If it's not broke, why fix it? Right? That's the state of mind that I have towards Arthur. If it's not broke, why fix it? It worked very well in the first fight. Repeat the same action again.
You're a jab and move. You're a stick and move fighter with a herky jerky style and a good jab. Like, why you didn't box in that manner? I don't know. I just don't know why you would want to get into a war of attrition with him. So that's my opinion. I think that he should try to get a fight with, a domestic foe in a big fight. Because honestly, I think that those would probably be bigger fights for him than a Joe Smith Jr. anyways. Joe Smith Jr. is fighting this weekend in New York State. I got news for you guys. It's at a very small venue. Kenny's been to the venue. It's a very small venue. This guy's not a star by any means in his home state, let alone in his home country. You're gonna do bigger business and bigger numbers against the Callum against the Callum Smith. Okay, another UK guy that's in the light heavyweight division, a guy who got a brutal knockout of your compatriot Lenin Castillo, a guy who went rounds with Dimitri Bivol, by the way. Callum Smith had us worried about the brother, right? So look, let's see you against Buatsi. Let's see you against Callum Smith. Let's see you against Callum Johnson. Let's see you against Craig Richards, who I've met a couple times, a really good guy. I don't know if you are the best light heavyweight in England. So let's go after that, and then try yourself against guys on this side of the pond, who, by the way, like I said, are not very lucrative fights, anyways.
I'm completely on board with you. I think he needs to build his resume a little bit, build his confidence in himself a little bit. And I think that you and I said this several fights ago. Actually, we said this during the Kovalev fight that he needs to change trainer and get rid of Atunde before I think he's going to achieve greatness. Because I think that Anthony Yarde has the tools that are needed to make a champ. I just think his coaching staff is lackluster,
The
especially when
physical tools, as opposed
yeah,
to
the physical tools.
yeah,
Yeah,
right. And
yeah.
he
So
had a lot going on. Like he lost his father, I think, like his grandfather, and like someone else in his family, like the same year during the pandemic. So his head probably wasn't in the right place against Arthur the first fight. But also, I just felt that Yard fought a guy in Arthur who just tactically didn't really know what he was doing. Like you had the game plan worked for you, right? Why mess around with it?
I hear you, and I agree with you. And just to respond to Lennox was best real quick, he said that he thought Yard did well against Kovalev. My response to that is he did well until he was not doing well. The guy got knocked down by a jab in the later rounds. He gassed out after a certain point, and it was his coach's fault that he gassed out, talking about leave it all in the ring, empty the tank, empty the tank, empty the tank, which is why I go back to saying that I think he needs some new coaching. But yes, he should fight some. He shouldn't be looking to fight Joe Smith Jr., Bevo, Beterbiev, or any of those guys just yet. He should be looking to fight people who are ranked top 10 to get more wisdom and experience under his belt, because I think he's going to need that for someone with the likes and the power and ferocity of Joe Smith Jr., Beterbiev. Bevo is a different story. It's a boxing style. He got beat with a boxing style by Lyndon Arthur, and I see that potentially happening again. I don't want to see Anthony Yarde against any of these three champs right just at this moment. I think he needs a little bit more of development, and I'm not hating on the guy. Like I said, I think he has all the tools that are needed in order to be a champ. It's just more so bringing them together and getting a different coach that is going to bring a little more skill out of him. But this is a perfect segue to the next topic of conversation. Only two more. We're closing. We're closing out soon. Next topic of conversation being Benavidez. He says, "This is," and I quote, "If he's not going to fight me, he needs to vacate the belts." He being Canelo, and I want to first let me give my thoughts, and then I want to hear your reaction, brother. I want to hear what you think about that. I'm gonna say that I completely agree with Benavidez, not in the sense of if he's not gonna fight me, he needs to vacate the belts. But no, if he's not gonna fight in that weight class, that division, then he needs to vacate the belts. Because if his plan is to go to fight Ilunga Makabu,
Yeah,
and then go,
yeah.
and yeah, and then go back down to 175 and not ever go back to 168, then he needs to relinquish those belts immediately. I agree with Benavidez, not with the if he's not gonna fight me. Like, come on, guy, you're getting a little too gassed and juiced up. You on the Mayweather juice. Mayweather said, "Oh, he's talking Benavidez," and now Benavidez, I guess, is believing it. No, no, it's not. If he doesn't fight Benavidez, he needs to give up the belts. If he's just not going to fight there anymore, he needs to give up the belts immediately so somebody else can fight for them and not hold up the division or hold up boxing. How a lot of people say Canelo already does, because people in around the divisions in which he fight with just want to wait for the Canelo payday as opposed to fight each other and fight other people. So, Maestro, please give me your thoughts and your reaction on Benavidez talking gangster.
Well, it's kind of a 180 by David Benavidez, because before, I mean, he was saying that everyone needs to earn their shot at Canelo. And if this quote is accurate, I guess he's kind of gone back on that. I mean,
He
I
tight.
I understand the sentiment of wanting to get a shot. And I guess what he's thinking is that he doesn't want a situation where Canelo's not fighting at 168 and is holding up the division because he's that powerful in the sport that people won't actually want to strip him, which has happened. I mean, we can look at the way Leo Santa Cruz has held up a lot of fights at 126. He hasn't fought it at 126 in ages, but he's the WBA super champion at 168. And because of that, you know, people haven't been able to unify titles, and there have been fights that haven't been able to get made, and people have not been able to fight for his belt. So maybe he's concerned about that, and that's a legitimate concern. But if he ends up taking an optional defense, which it seems like he's going to do in taking on Jermall Charlo, I hope that fight happens in Texas if it happens, because I'd really like to see it live. And I would go to Dallas for that. Hopefully it would happen in Dallas. As long as he's taking on an optional defense, I don't see a problem with it, because Canelo has fought only mandatories and mandatories and unification fights in his last few fights. He's entitled to an optional defense. And as an optional opponent, Jermall Charlo is actually not that bad. So my advice, my throw management to David Benavidez, who I like a lot and have a lot of respect for, is just to don't worry about Canelo and stay busy. Just keep doing your thing. Because if Canelo stays in the division, then that fight will be there for you. And if Canelo leaves the division, then those titles will be there for you, because you're about to fight David Lemieux for a interim title anyways, right? So, or if not an interim, it's a mandatory, one of the two. So you're in a position, just keep fighting, just keep doing your thing. You're still very young.
And start making weight.
And that too, and make sure you make weight. And you know, if Canelo's not there, Charlo will be there. If Charlo's not there, David Morrell Jr. is going to be right there. So you'll get your fights.
And there's a lot more. Callum, the guy who Canelo just beat as well. I forgot his name.
Caleb Plant.
Yeah, Caleb Plant. There's a few names. There's a lot of people for him to fight. He shouldn't only. I know he wants the Canelo payday. Everybody wants the Canelo big bank, but his turn will come. His turn will come. Just start making yourself look good again, is my opinion. There was a point where everybody was looking at a highlight clip from David Benavidez, which was like a 3 or 4 or a shitload of very fast uppercuts that he hit a guy with right before knocking him down. That I think was the height of David Benavidez, because I feel like he's been slowly falling off since then, missing weight several times. You know, showing that he's very susceptible on defense to get hit. I feel like he should work on bringing back the Benavidez that was knocking people out and not getting hit as much. He didn't look that great against Davis Jr. Davis Jr. is a little guy from a younger weight class. See, he should have gotten Davis Jr. up out of there very quickly. Instead, Davis Jr. lasted the whole fight, and he was doing his little defense thing and throwing the overhead punches that were landing and hitting
Davis
Benavidez.
Jr. isn't even really like a middleweight. He's like a guy who should be fighting at 154 pounds.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's a smaller dude. We're much smaller dude, so he should have gotten him out of there. In my opinion, David Benavidez needs to focus on making himself great again. I'm not quoting Donald Trump. You know, I'm not trying to make America great again. But Benavidez should focus on himself and his abilities and start focusing on making weight as opposed to focusing on the Canelo payday. I think that fight with Canelo and Benavidez, I think that's inevitable. I think it'll happen whether it's at 168 or 175. If I was Benavidez, I'd be looking to maybe grab one more belt at 168 and start moving up to 165 and try to beat Canelo to a belt at 175 and try to beat Canelo to a belt at 175. So when Canelo does go to 175 and try to unify the division, which is what I think he's going to do, when he does do that, he's already there. Benavidez is already there, sitting pretty with his belt, like, haha, you gotta fight me. Like I'm guaranteed to get the Canelo payday regardless.
There you go. There you go. So you said you had another topic, Kenny? Because I gotta go. It's the bottom of the hour.
Definitely, I have to head out too. Final topic is just leading to Canelo and Charlo. Thoughts on Canelo Charlo if that fight does happen, and what are your thoughts on that? Like,
Well,
are you excited to see that?
you left it on this one so that way we can actually talk about it extensively tomorrow on Mano a Mano Live with Kenny T, 8 p.m.
Definitely.
on my channel, Maestro A Boxing. Here's my short answer to that question, Kenny. I'm gonna watch it. It's a very good fight. Like I said, I hope it happens in Dallas, Texas. It would be a great stadium fight there at the Cowboys Stadium, 90,000. I favor Canelo in the fight, but it's definitely not my first choice of opponent, and I don't really think it adds to Canelo's legacy that much. I think that a move to 175 to clean out that division would have added to his legacy a lot more. But at the end of the day, the door still isn't closed on that. It's an optional defense, so I can't really complain about it. It's not a bad fight as optional defenses go.
I'd agree with you. He should definitely defend against some other people if he is going to do a title defense at 168. Otherwise, he should just relinquish the belt and go chase greatness. I don't think that he should look to defend his titles at 168. I think he should continue looking for greatness and move to 175 and try to unify the 175-pound division. I think that's the best scenario for Canelo, and to continue chasing the titles of greatest fighter of all time, greatest Mexican fighter of all time, crazy Hall of Fame career, and to just leave a mark in boxing that can never be erased. Unify two divisions and fighting since such a young age and fighting and beating the people that he fought. Although he does have that loss against Mayweather, it's still a great loss to have on your record. Shit, I'd rather lose to Mayweather than to lose to anybody else.
As crazy as this sounds, Kenny, I actually think that this helps Benavidez. I honestly do. I think that Benavidez is in a great situation right now because he's fighting for a vacant title against an undersized, short-armed opponent with punching power, but still undersized, short-armed and David Lemieux. And if and when Canelo moves up to 175, Benavidez becomes elevated to WBC champion again and becomes a 3-time WBC 168-pound champ without having to fight Canelo. And I think that helps David Benavidez because as much as I like David Benavidez, he's still very young and inexperienced compared to Canelo. And I think Canelo beats him.
Yeah.
So, at least this way, he stays undefeated. He gets his title for a third time. He gets to defend it a bunch of times. He gets to gain more experience and take on Canelo at a time when I think it's going to be a much more winnable fight for David Benavidez.
Yeah, and it'll also be a much more winnable fight for Benavidez at that point. He'll be more experienced and have more achievements in his career. And if he does take a loss, it'll be a loss against Canelo. It'll be a loss that doesn't necessarily affect him too much in a negative way. If he takes a loss right now, and it'll be like all this shit you was talking, all this I'm the greatest at 168 talk, and you only had the one belt twice, and you lost it in weight during weight twice. It would just be a bad situation. A better situation in the future for him if he was to wait a little bit before trying to press the action against Canelo. I don't think he has much to gain right now because I don't think that he has a very high chance of winning right now. But as you said, it was just a brief conversation about Charlo and Canelo. Since we are gonna beat that topic up tomorrow on Mano a Mano, we're gonna give it some manos and manos. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, we're good to go here today. We've podcasted for about 3 hours now. Some on your show, some on your channel, some on my channel. If you're here and you don't already, which I don't know if you are here, not subscribe to my show, subscribe to my Maestro A Boxing. Subscribe to me, please, and thank you. Knocked Out by Kenny. If you're here, please subscribe, like the channel. Maestro, I'll pass it over. Any last final thoughts or comments, anything you want to say before we do end up go getting some food and water, because I know we are both depleted.
That's exactly what it is to me, but it's going to be mano a mano right here. Mano a mano right here.
Si te quieres morir, pues ven. No le pares, te doy el 100. Tú tienes familia rehén. Yo te buscaré. A la mala fue que me colé. Y no fue colando café. Tú no entiendes lo que yo pasé. Por eso le saqué los pies. Y el problema que yo te daré. Mano a mano fue que lo logré. Tola yo te mataré. El diablo te va a
So it's mano a mano live tomorrow, Kenny. I got one of my cats here, Foster. Okay.
That's my guy right there.
Foster's just showed up. He's telling me that he's hungry. You know what I mean?
Everybody needs food and water now. This is break time.
100%. So tomorrow we're back for Mano a Mano live with Kenny T. Okay. And I also want to talk about this whole White situation with the split and what's happening there, because some more news just dropped on that, courtesy of Boxing Scene, Kenny. But pleasure to do a long live with you. We split it up between the two channels, and I want to thank everybody who's been with here for the long haul. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, okay, and hit that notification button so you know every time Kenny T goes live. All right.
And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. You all have a great night. Be well, sleep well, rest well. See you tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Mano a Mano. Peace.